Hello there. Thank you so much for joining again, Virtual Connection. This is a podcast about teleworking, the perks, the nuances, and everything in between sprinkled with some stories. Today's topic is about channeling your inner broadcaster. This is one of my favorite topics because I think it's all about how to bring your best voice forward. There's so much that can be said about the voice in a virtual presence that I'd rather we start with a story for this session, for this podcast episode, and then we can talk about best tips and tricks afterwards and what to stay away from. So back in 2010, I was living in Tucson, Arizona, studying for my undergraduate degree at the University of Arizona. There was one day that was especially hot outside, and I remember seeing a homeless man at the side of the road. He was kind of curled up in a ball on a bench. And so I went over and I went to the nearby gas station and I bought a couple bottles of water and I brought it over to him. I just felt so badly. It was such a hot day and he was trying to find all the shade that he could muster. And when I came up to him, I found out actually that he was blind. So I startled him. I did try speaking with him. I startled him, and we actually got to speaking a little bit. He was very gracious and grateful for the bottles of water. And then, we had a really nice conversation. I don't even remember exactly what we spoke about, but at the end of our conversation, he thanked me and he said he could hear the smile in my voice. So I think more than anything, that brings to light this idea that in a virtual setting or in an area where you can't really gauge a person's physical reactions based off of what you're seeing, it's so important and so key to actually be focusing in on how your voice is being carried across. So I kind of carry this with me, and I've practiced it throughout the years about how best to carry my voice, how to enunciate, particularly when I'm on calls with people from different countries where my accent might be very strong. And here's some tips or tricks that I've learned just to carry on throughout these virtual sessions, or if you are teleworking and if you find yourself in a virtual meeting that you're not familiar with. The first tip I have is to maintain composure. So if you're speaking in a calm voice, then even if everything seems like it's going wrong, it actually will put your participants or the other people on the call at ease, which will then put yourself at ease as well. One thing I do like to do to maintain composure in the beginning and kind of in the middle of the session is to remember to breathe. This might seem a little silly, but it's so true that we often get so engrossed in what we're talking about or what we're arguing about on the phone that it's very easy to just have that carried out in our voice. So if I find myself feeling flustered in a virtual meeting or on the phone or in a conference call, I'll put myself on mute, I'll close my eyes, and I'll take a deep breath in and then let it out. And that's kind of a refresh for my mind to just restart at the beginning and manage everything that I can within my own control. And I think even that practice alone, kind of reminding myself to maintain composure, does carry itself through any of the other virtual sessions or virtual meetings that I've been on. The second tip or trick that I might suggest when channeling your inner broadcaster is to make sure that you identify when people are contributing. So even if you're not able to see their contributions, if somebody shares, it's helpful even just to use their name, just to do a double check. That it's so often that we cut one another off. If there have been a lot of people on the call who are speaking all at the same time, I find it more helpful to be able to be a little bit more directive in how I give feedback or how I offer inputs in a call by doing exactly that, just by saying someone's name. Let's see, a third tip that I have would be to smile. So we'll go back to the original story with the man in Tucson. And I learned so much from him, even in that short time that we did speak, because I felt that so much can be said about or non-visual communication. So even though he couldn't see what I was doing, he could hear the smile in my voice. And I think that that's so true in all of our interactions, especially nowadays when people are feeling so stressed out and so out of control. It's just nice to be able to smile and to hear people smile in return on a call. You'll often see me, if you're watching the video, you'll often see me moving my hands quite a bit. This is one of my tricks that I like to really tap into whenever I'm doing any sort of virtual session or virtual call, because I normally move my hands a lot when I speak. And so to make everything sound a little bit more organic, I eliminate that barrier of a computer screen and just make sure that I'm actually continuing to speak as I would were I face to face with someone. Something you could do if you're interested in practicing the smile in your voice is to look at different pictures of different expressions and try to repeat those expressions or just say some words mimicking those expressions. So if you looked at a shocked voice, you could try and channel your inner broadcaster and act very shocked. If you're looking at a happy voice or a happy face, try and mimic that happiness in your voice. And you'll find it's actually quite interesting when you have an opportunity to explore the range of human emotion, even just with the voice that you're carrying out. It really is just a play on acting, and it's a challenge for those of us who find ourselves to be a little bit more monotonous when we speak. It really is, it just adds so much more dynamic approaches, so many more dynamic approaches to these virtual meetings that we now find ourselves doing when before we didn't really have access to do them. You know, some things I would suggest to stay away from, considering audio now that you're teleworking, or if you've always been teleworking and it's just something you've been thinking of, is yes, last time we spoke a little bit about the importance of having a microphone that cancels out any general noise behind you. I would suggest, if you're, this can go without saying, but if you're in a very noisy area or if you are picking up a lot of background noise, I highly advise you to tap into your uh, audio connection or connectivity test, whichever platform you're using. They often have one. So steer clear from always staying off of mute. We don't want to hear the background noises or, people talking in the corner in your room, because as we all know, being in a virtual space, it can be very distracting. Even just the smallest thing, just a sneeze in the corner can be very distracting. So avoid staying off of mute if you can. If you're not speaking, I suggest just go ahead and mute your microphone if you have that capability. And then when you do want to speak, go ahead and unmute yourself again. Another thing to stay away from regarding audio is speaking too quickly. That is one thing that's just, for me, it was a learnt capability. I mean, when I get very nervous, I speak very quickly and my words slur together, and it's similar if I get excited about something, and it happens in many languages. Particularly in Spanish, I feel that I get very, very excited and I speak very quickly. So I would avoid speaking quickly and do exactly as I said when we first started today's session, and just kind of take a deep breath to regroup yourself before you do start sharing your inputs. And if possible, I advise you to stay away from just winging it. um, I was having a conversation with one of my very close friends the other day, and she was reminiscing or kind of reflecting on how we had even just a very basic plan to our call that we had. I had a call for my birthday where I invited friends and family and coworkers to join me. And she was very struck by this idea that, I had a welcome screen, I had a few topics that I wanted to cover, and then there was an exit screen. She was so taken by that. And I would advise that if you are in a situation where you feel very uncomfortable, even just writing down an agenda might help you to feel a little bit more comfortable and grounded in your session or in your call. So then that way, when you do go to have the call, even if you forget something that you wanted to say, it's there written, so you can always reference it. So today's session is actually going to be a little bit shorter. I feel like I've been sitting at my computer nonstop. I'm so grateful for these creative spaces for us to be able to connect with our loved ones that I've never really had before. And in that same vein, I've realized that it has been a little bit more difficult for me to draw the line between work and kind of life balance because I am online so much more often than I was before. So uh, if you do think of anything that I've forgotten or some things that perhaps you've found to be most helpful when it comes to audio in a virtual session when you're teleworking, please go ahead and send them to me. My email address is citizenoftheworld89@gmail.com. You can send them to me there. Go ahead and feel free to comment on my YouTube video. And we look forward to speaking next week when we're going to be talking about how to share your space. We all find ourselves in shared space these days, so I would love to just share some ideas, tips, and tricks that I've found, and I would love to hear your inputs coming kind of preceding that session, what you've found to be most helpful as well. Thanks so much for listening today. Stay well, stay healthy, and stay connected.